Dr. Una Park stood at the viewport of the transport shuttle, watching the massive orbital station grow larger against the backdrop of space. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass, a young woman with tired eyes and nervous hands clutching a datapad. She had never imagined she would be here, representing Earth at humanity's first official meeting with the Galactic Collective. The station, called Kepler 9, was enormous, larger than any city Una had ever seen. It orbited a pale moon at the edge of explored space, a neutral ground where hundreds of alien species conducted their business. Lights flickered across its surface like stars, and ships of impossible designs docked at ports that spiraled around its circumference. "First time seeing it?" asked Ambassador Jiho Kang, settling into the seat beside her. He was older, maybe 50, with gray at his temples and the calm expression of someone who had spent decades negotiating impossible situations. "It never gets less impressive." Una nodded, not trusting her voice. She was a xenobiologist, someone who studied alien life from the safety of laboratories and computer screens. She was not supposed to be on diplomatic missions, but Earth's delegation was small, and every expert they could find had been drafted into service. "You'll do fine," Jiho said, as if reading her thoughts. "Just remember, most of these species have been part of the collective for thousands of years. They're going to test us, try to figure out where humanity fits in their hierarchy. Stay calm, be respectful, and don't let them intimidate you." The shuttle docked with a gentle thud. Una followed Jiho and the other 4 human delegates through the airlock and into the station proper. The corridor beyond was massive, with ceilings that stretched up 30 feet. Aliens of every conceivable shape moved past them, some walking, some floating, some slithering on multiple limbs. The air smelled strange, like ozone mixed with unfamiliar spices. A creature that looked like an insect, the size of a human, approached them. Its exoskeleton was deep green, and its multiple eyes focused on Jiho with what Una interpreted as disdain. "Ambassador Kang," it said, its voice clicking and precise. "I am Counselor Vril of the Mantoid Assembly. Welcome to Kepler 9. If you will follow me, the ceremony will begin shortly." They walked through corridors that seemed to shift in geometry, past windows that looked out onto the void of space. Other species watched them as they passed, some with curiosity, others with obvious contempt. Una tried not to stare, but it was impossible. Every few steps brought a new wonder, a being made of living crystal, a creature that seemed to be made of smoke, something that looked like a tree, but moved with purposeful intelligence. The ceremony hall was circular and vast. Tiers of seating rose up around a central platform where a device stood, a ring of dark metal 20 feet across, covered in symbols that seemed to move when Una wasn't looking directly at them. The scanner, she realized. The legendary precursor technology that classified every species in the galaxy. "The scanner determines your tier," Vril explained, addressing the human delegation. "It measures biological potential, evolutionary advancement, cognitive capability, and physical prowess. The results are absolute and have never been disputed in 10,000 years of collective history." Hundreds of alien beings filled the seats around them, representatives from across known space. Una felt their attention like physical weight. She wanted to disappear. A being that appeared to be made entirely of crystalline structures floated to the center of the platform. "I am Station Commander Thex," it said, its voice reverberating through the hall without need for speakers. "The classification ceremony will now begin. Each member of the human delegation will pass through the archive scanner. The results will be recorded in the central archive and will determine humanity's standing within the collective." One by one, the human delegates stepped through the scanner. The device hummed to life each time, light flowing across its surface in patterns that hurt to watch. Each scan took perhaps 10 seconds. Then a holographic display would appear above the scanner, showing the result. The first delegate, a military officer named Hai Jin, was classified as Tier 4. A murmur went through the audience. Tier 4 was respectable, Yuna knew from her briefings. It meant competent, useful, but not exceptional. The next 3 delegates received the same classification. Tier 4, Tier 4. Then it was Yuna's turn. She walked to the scanner on shaking legs. Jiho gave her an encouraging nod. She stepped into the ring of dark metal, and the world changed. The scanner activated with a sound like singing crystal. Light washed over her, through her, inside her. Yuna felt it examining every cell, every neuron, every molecule of her being. It didn't hurt, but it was deeply invasive, like being seen in ways no one should ever be seen. 5 seconds passed. The light continued. 10 seconds. The murmuring in the audience grew louder. 15 seconds. Something was wrong. The scanner's light began cycling through colors: blue to green to gold to something beyond color that Yuna had no name for. 20 seconds. The holographic display appeared above the scanner, but instead of showing a tier classification, it showed text that Yuna could somehow read, despite never having seen the language before. Unclassified apex, analysis inconclusive, potential immeasurable. The hall erupted into chaos. Vril's voice cut through the noise, sharp with accusation. Impossible. The scanner does not make errors. The humans must have interfered with it somehow. Run the scan again. Commander Vex floated closer, its crystalline body reflecting the strange light still emanating from the scanner. The scanner cannot be interfered with. It is precursor technology, protected by systems far beyond our understanding. Then run it again, Vril insisted. Prove that this reading is legitimate. Yuna stepped back toward the scanner, but the device shut down completely. When Vex attempted to reactivate it and direct it toward Yuna again, the same message appeared instantly. Without any scanning process. Unclassified a PEX analysis inconclusive, potential immeasurable. The hall descended into arguments. Species shouted at each other in dozens of languages. Some demanded Yuna be detained. Others insisted she be studied. A few voices called for her immediate execution as a potential threat. Jiho moved to Yuna's side, placing himself between her and the crowd. Dr. Park is under the protection of Earth's diplomatic immunity. Any attempt to detain or harm her will be considered an act of war. It was a brave statement, Yuna thought numbly, but Earth had exactly 12 small warships to its name. The collective had millions. Jiho's protection meant nothing if these beings decided she was a threat. Commander, Vex raised several of its crystalline appendages, and the hall gradually quieted. The Collective Council will convene an emergency session to discuss this matter. Until a decision is reached, Dr. Park will be housed in secure diplomatic quarters. No harm will come to her, and she will be treated with the respect due to a visiting delegate. Vril made a sound of protest. But Vex's form flashed with bright light, and the insectoid being fell silent. Security personnel humanoid, creatures in dark armor surrounded Yuna and the other delegates. They were escorted from the ceremony hall through corridors that had been cleared of other species. Yuna could feel eyes watching from doorways and side passages. Word was already spreading. The diplomatic quarters were luxurious, with rooms designed to accommodate human physiology, but Yuna barely noticed. She sat on the edge of a bed that adjusted to her weight, staring at her hands as if they belonged to someone else. What does it mean? She asked Jiho, who had refused to leave her alone. Unclassified apex. What am I? Jiho shook his head slowly. I don't know. But I promise you, Yuna, we're going to find out. And whatever it means, Earth stands with you. Through the window of her quarters, Yuna could see the vast expanse of the station spreading out around her. Somewhere out there, hundreds of species were discussing her fate. Some would fear her. Some would want to use her. Some would want her dead. She was just a scientist. She studied cells and DNA and evolutionary patterns. She was nobody special, just someone who had been good at biology and lucky enough to be chosen for this mission. But the scanner, ancient technology built by a civilization that had disappeared before most current species had even evolved, had looked at her and found something it couldn't classify. Something it called an apex. Something with immeasurable potential. Una closed her eyes and tried not to think about what that might mean for her, for humanity, and for the galaxy that was about to change forever. 3 days had passed since the ceremony, and Una had not been allowed to leave her quarters. She spent her time reading everything she could find about the Galactic Collective, about the scanner, about the mysterious precursors who had built it. The more she learned, the more frightened she became. News of the unclassified apex had spread across the collective faster than their fastest ships could travel. The human delegation received reports of riots on some worlds, celebrations on others, and emergency military mobilizations from the most powerful species. Everyone had an opinion about what Una represented, and most of those opinions were dangerous. Dr. Minho Choi, the physicist on their team, had set up his equipment in the common area of their quarters. He was young, brilliant, and had become Una's closest friend during the journey to Kepler 9. Now he worked frantically, trying to find some scientific explanation for what had happened. "There's nothing wrong with you," Minho said for the 100th time, studying the readings from his portable medical scanner. "Genetically, neurologically, you're completely human. Maybe a bit smarter than average, but nothing that would explain this." "Maybe the scanner is broken," Una suggested without much hope. Minho shook his head. "I accessed the station's historical records. The scanner has processed over 3 million species in its operational lifetime. It has never malfunctioned. Not once. And according to the technical data I could translate, it's self-repairing and operates on principles we don't even have theories for yet." Ambassador Jiho entered the room, his expression grim. "We have a visitor. Archivist Prime Nethys has requested a private meeting with Una. He's one of the oldest beings in the collective, responsible for maintaining precursor sites across the galaxy." Una's stomach tightened. "What does he want?" "To study you, I imagine. But he comes with Commander Thex's approval, and according to diplomatic protocol, we can't refuse without cause." Jiho met her eyes. "You don't have to do this alone. I'll be there, and so will Minho if you want." Una nodded. "Both of you, please." Archivist Prime Nethys was not what Una expected. He was vaguely humanoid, but his skin had a quality like old parchment, covered in symbols that seemed to be part of his biology rather than tattoos. His eyes were entirely black, reflecting light like pools of ink. He moved slowly, as if every action required careful thought. "Dr. Park," he said, his voice dry and whispering like wind through ancient halls. "I am honored to meet you. I have studied precursor technology for 4,000 years, and I have never seen the scanner respond as it did to you. 4,000 years. Una tried to comprehend that span of time and failed. "I don't understand what happened. I'm just a normal human." Nethys tilted his head. "May I examine you?" "Not physically. I wish only to observe your neural patterns with instruments that will not harm you." Una glanced at Minho, who studied the device Nethys was holding, and gave a cautious nod. "It's safe. It's similar to an EEG, but more sophisticated." The examination took only a few minutes. Nethys held the device near Una's head, and symbols appeared in the air between them, flowing like water. The archivist's expression, difficult to read on his alien features, showed what Una thought might be wonder. "Remarkable," he whispered. "You are aware that the scanner does not simply measure what you are, yes? It measures what you could become. It analyzes potential across multiple probability streams, examining every possible future state of your being. I didn't know that, Una said quietly. Net has made a gesture that might have been a nod. The tier system was designed by the Mythal precursors to prevent catastrophically dangerous species from gaining too much power too quickly. A species classified as Tier 1 has reached near the maximum of their evolutionary potential. They are powerful but limited. A species in Tier 9 has barely begun their journey. What about Unclassified? Jiho asked. In 10,000 years of recorded history, the scanner has refused to classify a being exactly twice before your case, Dr. Park. Nethys touched a control, and holographic images appeared. Historical records, written in languages that the station systems automatically translated. The first time was approximately 50,000 years ago, when the precursors themselves were scanned. They were rated as unclassified. Within 1,000 years, they had transcended physical reality entirely, becoming beings of pure energy and thought. Una felt cold. And the second time? Nethys's expression darkened. A species called the Devourers. They were unclassified, but where the precursors ascended, the Devourers descended into something terrible. They consumed not matter or energy, but potential itself. They fed on possibility, draining entire species of their capacity for growth and change. They nearly destroyed the galaxy before the precursors sealed them in dimensional prisons. The room fell silent. Minho found his voice first. Are you saying Una could become like that? I am saying the scanner cannot determine which path she will take, Nethys replied. Her potential branches in directions the scanner cannot fully analyze. This is why you are unclassified, Dr. Park. You exist at a crossroads that the scanner's probability engines cannot resolve. Una stood abruptly, walking to the window. I'm not going to become some kind of monster that eats people's potential. I'm a biologist. I study cells. I just want to go home. But you cannot, Nethys said gently. Already, factions within the collective are mobilizing. The Dominion, the alliance of Tier 1 and Tier 2 species, views you as a threat to their power structure. General Krove of the Dravic Empire is petitioning the Council for permission to take you into their custody for study. But their true intention is to weaponize whatever makes you special. Over my dead body, Jiho said flatly. That may be their alternative proposal, Nethys said. Others have suggested that the safest course is to eliminate the threat before it manifests. Una turned back to face them. Then what do I do? How do I prove I'm not a threat? Nethys approached her slowly. Come with me to the archive's core. The deepest levels of this station contain precursor records that even the Council does not have access to. Perhaps there we can find answers about what you are and what it means. Is that safe? Minho asked. Safer than remaining here? Nethys replied. The Council is in session now, debating her fate. Some voices call for extreme measures. And General Krove is not known for his patience. As if summoned by his name, alarms suddenly blared throughout the quarters. Red light pulsed from panels in the walls. Through the window, Una saw military ships moving into position around their section of the station. Jiho's communication device chirped urgently. He answered it, listened for a moment. Then his face went pale. Krove's forces are moving. They're going to take Una by force and deal with the diplomatic consequences later. The archive, Nethys said urgently. We must go now. There are passages they do not know about. Minho grabbed his portable equipment. Jiho activated his security override, unlocking the quarters' emergency exit. They ran through corridors that Nethys led them down. Paths that seemed to be service tunnels ignored by the station's main population. Behind them, Una heard the sounds of doors being forced open, of heavy footsteps and barked orders in alien languages. They were being hunted. They descended through levels of the station that grew progressively older, the architecture changing from modern alloys to ancient stone that hummed with residual energy. The passages were narrow here, and few of the station's other inhabitants seemed to know they existed. Nephis moved with surprising speed for someone so old. The archive's core is a precursor installation. It predates the station by millions of years. The station was built around it, but few remember this now. They emerged into a vast chamber carved from black stone that seemed to absorb light. In the center stood a structure that made Yuna's eyes hurt to look at a crystalline tower that extended both upward and downward into infinity. Its geometry wrong in ways that suggested it existed partially outside normal space. The archive, Nephis said. Here, the precursors stored their accumulated knowledge. Here, we may find the truth about what you are, Dr. Park. Yuna approached the tower cautiously. As she drew near, symbols began appearing on its surface, glowing with soft blue light. They formed patterns that she somehow understood, though she had never seen them before. "It's recognizing you," Nephis said, wonder in his voice. The archive only responds to beings it deems worthy of its knowledge. Yuna reached out and touched the crystal surface. Information flooded into her mind, not words, but pure understanding. She saw the history of the precursors, their rise from primitive beings to masters of reality itself. She saw their decision to transcend, to become something beyond physical limitation. And she saw what they had left behind, a warning, carved into the very fabric of the archive. They had ascended, yes, but in doing so, they had lost something essential. They had become so vast, so powerful, that they could no longer connect to individual beings, could no longer experience the simple joys and sorrows that made existence meaningful. The vision shifted. Yuna saw herself, but fractal and multiplied across countless timelines. In some, she ascended like the precursors, becoming a being of pure thought. In others, she descended into hunger like the devourers, consuming everything around her. In still others, she remained fundamentally human but changed, using her potential in ways that uplifted those around her. "I see it," she whispered. The light from the archive faded, leaving Crow's soldiers scattered and disoriented across the ancient chamber. Their general roared orders, but half their equipment was dead, smoking from energy overload. Yuna stood at the center of it all, her hand still touching the crystalline tower, feeling information continue to flow through her mind like a river of pure thought. "Move!" Jiho shouted, grabbing her arm. Before they recover, they ran deeper into the archive complex, down passages that seemed to shift and rearrange themselves. Nephis led them with certainty, his ancient fingers tracing symbols on walls that would open new doorways and close old ones behind them. Minho stayed close to Yuna, watching her with growing concern. "Are you okay? Your eyes are doing something strange." Yuna blinked, trying to focus. "I can see things. Patterns. The probability of Crow's soldiers finding us in the next 60 seconds is only 12% if we take the left passage, but 47% if we go right. Then we go left." Jiho said immediately. They took the left passage, and true to Yuna's prediction, they heard Crow's forces moving down the right corridor behind them. The soldiers' heavy footsteps and angry shouts grew distant. "How did you know that?" Minho asked. "I don't know," Yuna admitted. "The information is just there in my head. Like the archive downloaded something into my brain when I touched it." Nephis glanced back at her. "The archive has recognized you as heir to precursor knowledge. It is giving you access to their understanding of reality mathematics, physics, probability manipulation. But be careful, Dr. Park. This knowledge has a cost. The more you use it, the more your consciousness will expand beyond human boundaries." They emerged into a larger chamber that appeared to be some kind of abandoned transit hub. Ancient vehicles sat dormant in designated spaces, covered in dust that might have been accumulating for millennia. Nethys led them to a transport pod that looked like a smooth egg made of dark metal. This will take us to the outer edges of the station, far from Krove's forces. From there, we can explosion tore through the wall behind them. Soldiers poured through the breach, weapons raised and ready. These weren't Krove's people. Their armor was different, marked with symbols Una had seen in the collective's records. The Dominion. Dr. Park, a voice called out, amplified by suit speakers. By order of the Dominion High Council, you are to be detained pending investigation into potential galaxy-level threats. Surrender peacefully, and you will not be harmed. They're lying, Una said, the words coming to her with strange certainty. Probability analysis shows 93% chance they eliminate me immediately upon capture. They've decided I'm too dangerous to live. Jiho stepped forward, placing himself between Una and the soldiers. She's under Earth's protection. You have no authority. Earth has no power here, the soldier interrupted. You are a Tier 4 species with a fleet of 12 small warships. The Dominion controls 3,000 star systems. Your protection means nothing. Una felt something building inside her, the same sensation she'd experienced in the archive chamber. Information flooded her consciousness, the weaknesses in the soldiers' armor, the energy signatures of their weapons, the precise angles required to disable them without killing anyone. But something else came with that knowledge. A growing detachment, a sense of seeing people as systems to be analyzed rather than individuals to be cared about. She understood now what Nevis had warned her about. Using this power changed her, made her less human. Una, Minho said quietly beside her. Your eyes are glowing. She could feel it, the power building, ready to be released. One thought from her, and she could probably disable every soldier in this room. Maybe kill them if she wanted. The probability trees unfolded in her mind, showing her exactly how to do it. But that path led somewhere dark. She could see it branching into futures where she became less and less human with each use of her abilities, until she was something vast and terrible and alone. No, she whispered, pulling back from the power. I'm not doing this. I'm not becoming a weapon. The lead soldier raised his weapon. Then you die here. A new voice cut through the tension. Actually, she has a third option. A figure materialized from the shadows, or maybe had been there all along, and they simply hadn't noticed. It was humanoid but wrong, its form flickering between solid and transparent, its features constantly shifting. When it spoke, reality itself seemed to ripple. I am Observer 7, it said. I am what remains of the precursors, a fragment left behind to monitor for species reaching the threshold of ascension. Dr. Park, you are the first in 50,000 years to touch that threshold while maintaining your individual identity. The Dominion soldiers backed away, their weapons lowering despite themselves. Even they recognized what stood before them. What do you want? Una asked. To offer you a choice, Observer 7 said. You can embrace your potential fully, accelerate your transformation, and ascend as the precursors did. You would become powerful beyond measure, capable of reshaping reality itself. Or you can reject it, suppress your abilities, and remain human. Both paths are valid. And if I refuse both? Una said. What if I want to stay human but not give up the chance to use what I'm becoming? Observer 7's form solidified slightly, almost as if surprised. That is the third path. The dangerous path. The precursors tried it and failed. They found themselves unable to maintain their individual identity while expanding their consciousness. They became so vast they lost their sense of self. But I'm not a precursor, Una said. I'm human. And humans are really good at being stubborn about impossible things. Before Observer 7 could respond, alarms erupted throughout the station. The walls shook with impacts that weren't weapons fire. Something else was happening. Something bigger. Ned, his access to wall panel, his expression shifting to horror. The Devourers. They're breaking free from their dimensional prisons. The energy signature from Yuna's awakening has drawn them. They're emerging across multiple sectors of space. The Dominion soldiers received emergency transmissions through their helmets. Their leader looked at Yuna with an expression mixing fear and calculation. Our fleets are reporting attacks by unknown entities. Ships are losing power. Crew members are falling into comas. Whatever these Devourers are, they're heading straight for this station. They feed on potential, Observer 7 said. Dr. Park is like a beacon to them. They've been imprisoned for millennia, starving. She represents an infinite feast. Yuna felt her stomach drop. How long until they get here? At their current speed, less than an hour, Nethys said, his voice shaking. Nothing we have can stop them. When they were last free, it took the combined might of the precursors at the height of their power to imprison them. We have no such power now. The Dominion soldier made a decision. The Council will be informed. They will likely decide to hand Dr. Park over to the Devourers to appease them. No, Jiho said firmly. Earth will not allow. Earth's position is irrelevant, the soldier interrupted. But my orders have changed. I'm to evacuate Dr. Park to a secure location while the Council deliberates, which means taking her to where they can easily turn her over to the Devourers. Minho said bitterly. Yuna looked at each of them. Jiho, who had protected her from the start. Minho, her friend who had never wavered. Nethys, who had risked everything to help her understand what she was. Even Observer 7, ancient and unknowable, watching her with what might have been curiosity. I won't let anyone hand me over, she said quietly. And I won't run. If the Devourers are coming because of me, then I need to face them. That's suicide, Jiho protested. Maybe, Yuna agreed. But it's also the only choice where I stay myself. If I run, I'm just delaying the inevitable. If I ascend like Observer 7 suggests, I lose who I am. But if I face them... She paused, seeing probability trees branch out in her mind, most of them ending in her death. But just a few leading somewhere else entirely. Another explosion rocked the station, closer this time. Through a nearby viewport, Yuna could see space tearing open like fabric being ripped. Things were coming through, shapes that hurt to look at. Entities that existed partially outside normal reality. The Devourers had arrived early. The soldiers. Communication systems screamed with emergency broadcasts. Ships were dying around the station, their crews simply ceasing to function as the Devourers drained them of all potential for action. For thought, for life itself. We need to evacuate, the Dominion soldier said. Now, no, Minho said. We need to fight. The soldier laughed bitterly. Fight with what? You're humans. You have no weapons that could hurt those things. Minho turned to Yuna. But she does. She's an unclassified apex. She has potential those things want. Maybe that's also what makes her dangerous to them. Yuna felt the power stirring inside her again. The vast knowledge from the archive, combined with whatever mutation made her different from other humans. She could feel her consciousness starting to expand, to see more and more probability branches, to understand deeper patterns in reality, and she could feel herself starting to slip away from her humanity. Minho, she said, grabbing his hand, I need you to promise me something. If I start to lose myself, if I start becoming something that isn't me anymore, Yuha. Space itself was screaming. Yuna floated in the void outside Kepler 9, surrounded by nothing but vacuum and stars and the approaching nightmares that were the Devourers. She should have been dead. No human could survive in space without protection, but something had changed inside her when she stepped through the breach. Her body had adapted, Or perhaps reality had simply agreed to let her exist here because she believed she could. That terrified her more than the Devourers did. The nearest Devourer was massive, larger than Earth's moon, a shape that hurt to perceive because it existed in more dimensions than human eyes could process. It looked like a hole in space, but worse, a hole that consumed not just matter but possibility itself. Where it passed, stars didn't just die, they became incapable of ever having existed. Una reached out with her expanded consciousness and tried to understand what she was facing. The archive's knowledge flowed through her mind, showing her what the precursors had learned about these entities. The Devourers weren't really alive, not in any traditional sense. They were more like universal constants that had gained awareness, entropy, given form, and hunger. Behind her, through the breach in the station's hull, she could sense Minho watching. His presence was a warm point in her awareness, grounding her, reminding her she was still Una Park from Earth, still human despite everything. The Devourer noticed her. Its attention was like being crushed under the weight of collapsing universes. A voice that wasn't sound spoke directly into her mind. Potential. Infinite. Feed. No, Una said, and her voice carried through vacuum because she needed it to. You can't have me. The Devourer surged forward. Una felt it trying to drain her, to consume the vast potential the scanner had detected. But something strange happened. The more it tried to feed, the more potential she seemed to generate. It was like trying to empty an ocean with a bucket, except the ocean was getting larger with every scoop. Impossible. Potential does not regenerate. Una smiled grimly, understanding now. It does if you're human. We make our own potential. Every choice, every decision, every moment creates new possibilities. You can't drain me because I'm not a finite source. I'm a process. The Devourer's hunger intensified. More of them were arriving, tearing through space in a dozen locations around the station. The Collective's fleets tried to fight back, but their weapons were useless. Beam weapons simply ceased to exist before reaching the targets. Missiles forgot they had ever been launched. Entire ships lost the potential to function and drifted as dead metal through space. Una could see it all through her expanded awareness. The battle was spreading. More Devourers were emerging from their dimensional prisons across the galaxy, drawn by the beacon of her presence. This wasn't just a fight for the station anymore. It was a fight for everything. On the station, Ambassador Jiho was coordinating with Collective Command. The 12 human warships that represented Earth's entire military had positioned themselves in a defensive formation. Not because they could actually fight the Devourers, but because humanity refused to run. Commander Diane Lee led the human squadron from the bridge of the frigate, Soul's Pride. His ships were tiny compared to the Collective's massive warships, barely large enough to carry crews of 20 each. But what they lacked in size, they made up for in unpredictability. All ships, Doyun's voice crackled over the communications channel. Those things feed on potential, unpredictability. So we're going to be as unpredictable as possible. No formation flying, no standard attack patterns. Every captain makes their own decisions. Make them regret trying to eat us. The human ships scattered in 12 different directions, moving in patterns that made no tactical sense. They fired weapons at random intervals, changed course without warning, did everything wrong according to military doctrine. And it worked, for a moment. The Devourers, used to feeding on species that followed logical patterns, couldn't quite predict what the human ships would do next. It didn't hurt the Devourers, but it confused them, bought precious seconds. Una felt the battle through her expanded senses. She saw Doyne's ship dodge a Devourer's grasp by accelerating in a direction that would leave them unable to brake, trusting they'd figure something out. She saw another human frigate use its own engine exhaust as a weapon, not to damage but to blind and distract. Humans being beautifully, chaotically, impossibly human. But it wasn't enough. More devourers were arriving every minute. The collective's forces were being systematically drained. Ships that had flown for centuries simply stopped. Their crews fallen into comas as their potential for action was consumed. Una had to do something bigger. She reached deeper into the power inside her, letting her consciousness expand further. She could see probability branches for the entire battle now, millions of futures unfolding simultaneously. In most of them, everyone died. The devourers consumed the station, then the nearby systems, then spread across the galaxy like a plague. But there were other futures, rare and fragile, where something different happened. Where Una did something the devourers didn't expect. "Minho," she called out, her voice reaching across space directly into his mind. "I need you to trust me. I'm about to do something that's going to look really bad." In the breach, Minho pressed his hand against the force field holding atmosphere inside the station. "What are you planning?" "Something only a human would be crazy enough to try. I'm going to give them what they want." Before he could protest, Una stopped resisting the devourer's hunger. She opened herself completely, letting them feed on her potential. The nearest devourer surged forward eagerly, its form wrapping around her like darkness made solid. It began to drain her, and the sensation was indescribable. Una felt her futures being consumed, probability branches withering and dying. The person she might have become, the things she might have accomplished, all of it being eaten by something that knew only hunger. But as the devourer fed, it was also receiving something else, knowledge of what it was consuming. Human memories, human emotions, human experiences. The devourer had existed for eons, but it had never truly understood what it was eating. Potential was just abstract energy to it, something to consume without thought. Now it was experiencing that potential from the inside. It was feeling Una's childhood, her love of discovery, her fear and hope and determination. It was experiencing what it meant to choose, to grow, to change, not because of external pressure, but because of internal desire. What is this? The devourer's voice thundered in her mind, confused and almost frightened. "This is being alive," Una replied, even as she felt herself fading. "Real life. Not just existing, but growing, choosing, becoming something new." She showed it everything. Every human who had ever lived, every choice they had made, every dream they had pursued. She showed it Earth, a small world that had produced billions of individuals, each one unique, each one creating their own potential through the simple act of living. "You're starving," Una said. "Not because there isn't enough to eat, but because you only know how to consume. You take potential from others instead of creating it yourself. That's why you're always hungry." The devourer was drowning in human experience, overwhelmed by the sheer weight of individual consciousness. It had consumed countless species, but it had always done so from the outside, draining them without understanding what it was taking. Now it was inside that experience, and it was changing something fundamental. "Stop. Too much. Cannot process." "I'll stop," Una said, feeling her strength failing. "But only if you listen. Only if you choose to change." The other devourers were approaching, drawn by the feast. Una felt her consciousness fragmenting, spreading too thin across too many dimensions. She was losing herself, becoming something vast and scattered and no longer human. Then she felt Minho's presence, clear and strong in her mind. He was speaking to her, words she could barely hear but recognized anyway. "You're Una Park. You're 28 years old. You became a biologist because you watched a documentary about coral reefs when you were 7. Your favorite food is your grandmother's kimchi stew. You cry during sad movies, even when you know they're manipulating you. You're a human. You're my friend. Come back." The words were an anchor, pulling her back from the edge of dissolution. Yuna gathered herself, pulling her scattered consciousness back together, refusing to let go of her individual identity. The devourer feeding on her recoiled, suddenly unable to continue. Something had changed in its fundamental nature. It had experienced what it meant to be an individual, and now it couldn't unknow that. The hunger was still there, but it was competing with something new: curiosity, wonder, the terrible, beautiful burden of choice. What have you done to me? I gave you the chance to be more than hunger, Yuna said. But the choice is yours. You can go back to consuming everything, draining the galaxy of all potential until there's nothing left, and you starve anyway. Or you can learn to create instead of consume, to grow instead of feed. The devourer hung in space, its form flickering and unstable. Around it, the other devourers approached, ready to consume both Yuna and their transformed kin. Then something unprecedented happened. It changed. Devourer turned on its fellows. It didn't attack them, but it did something stranger. It showed them what it had experienced. The sensation of being individual, of having choice, of understanding that potential could be Yuna woke to the sound of steady breathing and the smell of antiseptic. Her body ached in ways she had never experienced before, like every cell had been stretched to its absolute limit and then somehow put back together. When she opened her eyes, she saw Minho asleep in a chair beside her bed, his hand resting near hers on the blanket. She was in a medical facility, but not the sterile white room she expected. The walls were made of that strange black stone from the archive's core, and symbols glowed softly across the ceiling, monitoring her vital signs in ways that felt both ancient and impossibly advanced. You are awake, Nethys said, materializing from the shadows. This is good. You have been unconscious for 6 days. 6 days. Yuna tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Everything hurt. Easy, Nethys said, helping her settle back against the pillows. You pushed your body and mind far beyond what should have been survivable. The fact that you are alive at all is remarkable. The devourers? Yuna asked. The battle ended shortly after you lost consciousness. The devourers. They split. Approximately 40% of them chose to continue feeding as they always had. These were driven back into their dimensional prisons by the collective fleets, though at terrible cost. But the other 60%. Nethys paused, and for the first time, Yuna saw something like wonder on his ancient face. They stopped fighting. They are now in orbit around various star systems, attempting to understand what you showed them. They are trying to learn how to create potential instead of consuming it. Yuna let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. So it worked. You changed the fundamental nature of beings that had existed unchanged for billions of years. You gave them something they never had choice. Whether that was wise remains to be seen. Minho stirred in his chair, his eyes opening slowly. When he saw Yuna awake, his expression transformed from exhaustion to joy. You're back. Really back? I'm back, Yuna confirmed. Thanks to you. I heard you calling me back when I was out there. You kept me human. Minho's eyes were red, like he'd been crying. You were gone for almost 2 minutes after I got you inside. No heartbeat, no breathing. Nethys did something with archive technology to bring you back. The archive recognized that losing you would be a tragedy for the galaxy's future. Nethys said simply. A knock on the door preceded Ambassador Jiho's entrance. He looked older than when Yuna had last seen him, stress adding years to his face. But he smiled when he saw her conscious. Dr. Park, I'm relieved to see you awake. The Collective Council has been active during your recovery. Yuna grimaced. Let me guess. Someone to kill me, someone to study me, and someone to lock me away forever. Actually, no, Jiho said, pulling up a chair. The situation has changed dramatically. The Devourer's attack affected every species in the collective. Billions died, but billions more would have perished if not for your actions. You're not seen as a threat anymore. You're seen as... He paused, searching for the right word. A catalyst. Someone who changed everything. There is more, Nethys added. During the battle, your human warships performed remarkably. Commander Doyen and his squadron saved 3 Dominion cruisers through tactics that defied all military logic. Your species' unpredictability became an asset. The Council has been forced to reevaluate the entire tier system, Jiho continued. If a Tier 4 species can produce someone like you, and if random, illogical human tactics can succeed where conventional warfare failed, then maybe the rankings were never measuring the right things. Yuna slowly pushed herself into a sitting position, ignoring the protests from her body. What happens now? Now you make a choice, said a new voice. Observer 7 materialized in the corner of the room. Jiho jumped slightly. Apparently, he had never gotten used to the precursor fragment's unsettling presence. You stand at a crossroads, Dr. Park, Observer 7 said. The power within you remains. You could continue to develop it, to ascend towards something beyond human limitation. Or you could choose to seal it away, to return to being purely human. Or, it paused. You could forge a third path, as you have been doing. Yuna thought about it. She could feel the power inside her, dormant, but not gone. The connection to the archive, the ability to see probability branches, to understand patterns in reality that most beings could never perceive. It was terrifying and amazing in equal measure. I don't want to transcend, she said finally. The precursors lost something when they ascended. They became so vast they forgot what it meant to be individuals. I don't want that. And sealing it away? Observer 7 asked. Yuna shook her head. I can't pretend I'm not different now. And maybe being different is okay. Maybe the galaxy needs people who don't fit into neat categories. The third path, then, Observer 7 said with what might have been approval. Remaining fundamentally human while accepting what you have become. It is dangerous. You will be tempted to use your power in ways that erode your humanity. You will face those who fear what you represent and those who wish to exploit it. I know, Yuna said, but I won't be alone. She looked at Minho, who nodded immediately. Whatever you need. I'm with you. As is Earth, Jiho added. The Council has offered humanity a position as full members of the collective, with voting rights and territorial protections. We're no longer just Tier 4 newcomers. We're recognized as a species with unique value. There is one more thing, Nethys said. He produced a device that looked like a smaller version of the scanner. The Collective Council has agreed to decommission the old scanner system. It will be replaced with something new. Something that measures not what beings are, but what they choose to become. I am designing this new system, and I would like your input, Dr. Park. Yuna took the device carefully, feeling it hum with potential under her fingers. A system that values choice over hierarchy. That sounds very human. Over the next weeks, Yuna recovered her strength while the galaxy reorganized itself around the new reality she had created. The tier system was officially dissolved, replaced with a cooperative framework where species were evaluated on their contributions, rather than their innate capabilities. The Devourers who had chosen to change formed a loose collective of their own, learning to create rather than consume. It was a difficult process. Some fell back into old habits and had to be re-imprisoned. But others succeeded in generating their own potential, becoming something the universe had never seen before. Minho stayed by Yuna's side through it all, helping her navigate the changes in herself while remaining grounded in her human identity. When she would start to drift too far into abstract thinking, seeing people as probability clouds rather than individuals, he would pull her back with a joke or a memory or just his presence. Commander Doyun and the human squadron became celebrities of a sort. Their unconventional tactics studied by military academies across the collective. Humanity's reputation shifted from weak newcomers to unpredictable allies worth having. 3 months after the battle, Una stood in a new chamber built at the heart of Kepler 9. It was open to pursue representatives from every species in the collective, all 847 of them, plus the few devourers who had chosen to participate in galactic society. In the center of the chamber stood Nethys's new creation, a scanning device that looked nothing like the old scanner. Where the original had been imposing and absolute, this one was inviting and open. Instead of a ring to pass through, it was a platform to stand upon. Instead of judging and classifying, it would measure and celebrate. The old system told you what you were, Una said, addressing the assembled representatives. This new system will help you discover what you can become. It doesn't measure you against others. It measures your potential for growth, for choice, for change. She stepped onto the platform herself, demonstrating. The device activated, and instead of displaying a tier or classification, it showed something else, a constantly shifting display of possibilities, of futures that could exist if she made certain choices, of potential waiting to be realized. The display showed no absolute answer because there was none. Una Park was not defined by what she was, but by what she chose to be with each decision. Each day, each moment, when she stepped off the platform, the holographic display changed to show a single word, unclassified. Not because the system couldn't measure her, but because she had chosen to be unmeasurable, to refuse categorization, to define herself. I'm still human, Una said to the assembly. I still eat too much when I'm stressed. I still cry at sad movies. I still make mistakes and doubt myself. But I'm also something more now, something that doesn't fit in the old boxes. I think that's okay. I think maybe all of us are unclassified if we really think about it. We're all more than any system can measure. Vril, the mantoid counselor who had first greeted the human delegation, stood from his seat. You have changed everything, Dr. Park. You have given us freedom from a system that defined us for millennia. But freedom is terrifying. What if we make the wrong choices? Una smiled. Then you'll make different choices next time. That's what being truly alive means. Not being perfect, but being able to grow, to change, to choose. One by one, representatives from different species approached the new scanning platform